difference. And I'll give you a brief example. With Wegmans, we are now in 6 states. We have over 90 stores, employing over 40,000 employees. And I feel as if it's imperative that I make sure that as we're expanding into new markets, which may not look like upstate New York, may not look like the profile of population in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. We're now moving into areas where diversity is an everyday thing. We're recognizing that people are different and they like to eat different things. So it's up to me to make sure that as we're moving into these areas that we're not selling the same things that we're selling in these stores. And that's something that I can do, and helping them to recognize the importance of diversity and knowing that we need to make sure that we are ensuring our customers we're meeting their needs. So I encourage you that whatever you decide to do in life, whatever you decide to explore, make sure that you recognize that there are others that will help you, but it's you that will make the difference. Wegmans started from an apple cart, a little apple cart, and look at it today. We just named our 45-year-old female president who is operating a multi-billion-dollar business. The apple is in your hands. Take a bite.
Good morning. Let's say it louder. Come on, folks. All right. I know that SUNY is in the house pretty strongly, and we have multiple campuses. Am I right? So if you're from SUNY, a big shout out. Come on now. And I know Syracuse University is in the house as well. And there you go. There you go. For me, it's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Carlos Medina. I'm the Vice Chancellor and Chief Diversity Officer at SUNY at the system level. And let me just say that our system is the largest in the country. It's the most comprehensive system of higher education in the nation. We got 64 campuses, 90,000 employees, folks, and 500,000 students. That's an incredible enterprise. Am I not right on that? Okay. So, we got to put things in perspective. This tri-state conference is fantastic. I am so delighted to be here and to MC part of this program. And I'm also very, very excited to introduce our keynote speaker. I think we're all in for a treat. Really, let's give him a round of applause, even though I haven't introduced him yet. But I think I'm as excited as all of you are because he's someone that I've listened to for quite some time. And he's just an incredible correspondent on the news. Before I introduce him, let me say a couple more things. Much of what has been talked about this morning, and I'm sure more into the afternoon, and what we're trying to do at SUNY is really put diversity and issues of equity and inclusive excellence front and center. But we're not alone. The entire country, when it comes to higher education, has been addressing these issues for the last couple of years in a really strong way. Particularly, currently, as a result of the new administration in Washington, we are faced with so much polarization in this country. And so we've had to do a lot of work at SUNY to be out front and really make our entire student body feel like they are welcome, that all of you belong, and that we love having you on our campuses. So an applause to you, folks. And so as I think about introducing our keynote speaker, let me just say a couple of words on that. I think this is really fortuitous for me because back in February, folks, the state of New York, the legislators, put on a major conference once a year. And it's the Black and Latino legislators that get together to address the issues faced by African Americans and Latinos in the state of New York and the nation. And they come together and put a phenomenal conference in Albany in February. And we get about 4,000 or 5,000 people that attend that. And wouldn't you know that the keynote speaker at that event was RolandS.Martin. And so I was out of town, and I was feeling really bad because I wasn't able to be there and to listen to him. And I had no idea that I would be introducing him today. So that's why I say it's kind of fortuitous. I'm just so happy to do so. So without further ado, Mr. Roland Martin, host of TV One Now, American journalist, syndicated columnist, and author. Martin spent 6 years as a contributor for CNN, appearing on numerous shows and earning accolades near and far for his no-holds honesty, conviction, and perspective on various issues. In 2009, CNN was awarded the Peabody Award for its outstanding 2008 election coverage, of which Martin was a member of the best political team on television. Martin has been named one of the top 50 political pundits by Daily Telegraph in the United Kingdom and has appeared numerous times on a variety of American networks, as well as media outlets in Canada, Colombia, Italy, Australia, and South Africa. Isn't that international? Let's give him a round of applause on that. He is the former executive editor, general manager of the Chicago Defender, the nation's most historic black newspaper. He is the former founding news editor for Savoy magazine under the team of New York-based Vanguard Media, and the former founding editor of BlackAmericaWeb.com. He has also written pieces for Ebony and Essence magazines. Mr. Martin is a life member of the National Association of Black Journalists and a life member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in journalism from Texas A&M University and a master's degree in Christian communications from Louisiana Baptist University. He has been awarded honorary degrees from Florida Memorial University, the University of Maryland University College, and Lemoyne Owen College. Please join me. Give him a round of applause.
All right, so how we doing? Good, glad to see y'all. Glad to be here. I was up a little late, so who's watching the Mississippi State-UConn game last night? That was a hell of a game. I've watched lots of basketball, and that probably was one of the greatest basketball games I've seen. And it amazes me when folks say, "You were watching the women's basketball game?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like basketball." I said, "It don't have to be gender-based." I said, "Good basketball is good basketball." Plus, if you watch a women's game, you can watch people learn how to shoot free throws. It's a little different when it comes to skill set, and so it was good. Certainly tweeting that last night as well, and so I'm certainly glad to be here to see all of you, and also see if you were found using technology. Although you were not there, you could have watched my speech on Periscope. See, I am very much about technology. And I'm all about being able to do it myself. See, it amazes me when I run up against millennials who somehow think that they're like, they figure they 21, 22, 24, 25. They're like, what you know about technology? I'm like, let me be perfectly clear. I will destroy any millennial when it comes to technology. And so right now, let me turn this around. So y'all need to wave. So right now, we're live streaming on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube all at the same time. So I'll turn that around. So cool. Okay, y'all done. I'm turning it back. And the reason that is important to me is because we're living in that world. We're just living in a completely different world. And for the life of me, I don't understand when I run into folks who are 40 plus and they go, "Oh man, I don't feel like learning all this sort of stuff." When the reality is, you never stop learning. You never stop learning. There's never a situation where I believe I've learned everything that I need to learn about my business. What I am doing, I have done since I was 14 years old. I went to a communications high school in Houston, a magnet school. And so I decided at a very early age what it is I want to do. And in 34 years, I've never changed. Folks have come to me and they wanted me to do other stuff. I've had folks literally come to me in Chicago and Dallas and Houston and DC, other places, wanted me to run for office. I said, no, that's simply not what God designed for me to do. And that's important when you talk about your career, because I have seen so many people literally lose out on future opportunities because they stopped learning. And they just simply said, well, I don't need to know that stuff. But that was really how I operated even in high school. I had folks who were telling me then, you should only concentrate on one thing, just do newspaper, just do television, or just do radio. My philosophy was, no, I want to do all of it. And they said, all of it? I said, yes, all of it. And in fact, when I was in high school, I got mad because I took so many communications classes. They would not let me take a photography class because I had too many communications classes. And I was mad as hell. Because I did not like the fact that here I was leaving and did not master that skill set. And the same thing applies now. And so when I'm covering stores, people go, dude, you're actually shooting your own video? And I go, yeah, what's the problem? They're like, but you're the host of the show. I'm going, yeah, I know. And they said, but why are you shooting your own stuff? Because I know what the hell I want. I said, I don't feel like I have to explain to somebody else what I want, and then I don't get what I want, now I'm mad. And so there were times where I've literally taken the camera out of somebody's hands and said, let me show you what I'm talking about. And so we were just Thursday, I was in Dallas, and I was interviewing Nancy Lieberman for a new project that I'm working on, a new sports show. And I walked in, and my longtime executive producer, he knew exactly what was going on. So when I walk in, so I'm looking at camera angles, I'm looking at shots, I'm looking at, okay, what do we have? And I'm looking at adding different stuff, because I typically roll with 5 HD cameras at all times. And one of the guys worked with us before, he knew what was going on. And folks who work with me, they know, because so new people go, what's this guy doing? They said, just wait, because he's not happy with what he sees. And so then all of a sudden I'll start doing stuff, and these guys are going, but isn't he the host? And they said, yeah, but it's his show. And the reason that's important, because when it's yours, when you are the one who is in control, you know exactly what your vision is. And that's just critically important. So I'm gonna weave some of that in terms of what I want to talk about today. One of the things I don't do, I don't write speeches. I wrote a speech once, didn't read from it. I was mad as hell that I wasted all that time. And I really prefer to allow God to do what God does in terms of speak to me in a different way in terms of when I go somewhere. And so the room speaks, people speak, and moments speak. And last night, as I was watching the game, I finished reading an amazing book. And the book is called I Never Had It Made, authored by Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson, the first African-American baseball player to play in Major League Baseball. And it was a phenomenal book. I grew up in the summertime reading 300 books a summer. My parents made it clear we were going to read. I still read typically 7 to 9 books at one time. And so I finished that book last night, and it was an amazing book. If you want to see books that I've read, just go to Twitter and just put in hashtag Roland's Book Club. So every book you see there, I've actually read. I'm not one of these folks who say, oh, go get this, and never read it. I read all of those books. And even when it's a bad book, when I start a book, I have to finish it. There's something more painful than starting a really bad book. I'm like, damn, I got to finish this book. Oh my God. Anybody ever had that experience where you just read and you put it down and you said, no, but see, for me, I can't. Literally, if I start a book, I have to finish it. Now, it might take me 7 damn years to finish reading that book. Oh my God, I read it. Lord, I'm telling you, one book gave me flash. They were just so bad. Because I hate bad writing. I just hate bad writing. And so it was just killing me. It was killing me, but I had to finish it. So I finished this book last night, and the reason that title is important because here you have one of the most phenomenal baseball players in history. In fact, on April 15th, this year will be the 70th anniversary of Jackie Robinson playing his first game in Major League Baseball. It will be the 20th anniversary of Major League Baseball retiring his number. He is the only player in sports history to have his number retired by every team in the league. Since Mariano Rivera retired, he was the last baseball player to wear number 42 as his regular number. No other player can ever wear number 42 in Major League Baseball. And so on that day, they will celebrate the 70th anniversary. And in reading the book, he titled it, "I Never Had It Made," because he says in the beginning, in the middle, and even his last words in the end, that no matter what he accomplished, no matter what he was able to do, as long as he knew that there were African Americans out there who did not have the ability to eat wherever they wanted to eat, to work wherever they wanted to work, to be able to utilize their skill set to provide for their family, he said that he didn't have it made because somebody else did not have that opportunity. And what he's saying is that no matter how excited we are with our progress, as long as there is one person who is black or who is Latino or who is Asian or is a female, and they don't have the opportunity to use all of their God-given talents to succeed, then we have not achieved our goal. See, what happens is we love to talk about diversity, and folks go, oh, we've done this and this and this and this and this. And then when we start laying out barriers that still exist, folks go, but can't you just acknowledge that it's gotten better? Happens all the time. I love it when I'm watching that fool Sean Hannity or Bill O'Reilly on Fox News, and when we're talking about race in America or what's happening, gender in America, they always go, but can't you just acknowledge it's gotten better? See, the reason, folks, whenever you hear somebody say that, what they really are saying is, I'm not really trying to hear all that other stuff. I need you to make me feel good. I need you to make me feel whole and satisfied that we've made progress. Anybody with a brain knows full well we've made progress in terms of our society. We understand. You look at the numbers in terms of, you look at where we were in 1957 in terms of African Americans and Latinos and other minorities and women in corporate America, in academia. It looks totally different than it does today. We all know that. We all understand that things have indeed changed. But when we live in denial, as if somehow things are just so perfect and wonderful that all we are doing is fooling ourselves and making it difficult to have the difficult conversations, but not just the conversations, we make it hard to actually change the game. And see, that's the real challenge for all of us. How do we change the game? See, I'm not interested. I mean, I'm telling you, we have people, they got conferences and summits, all that sort of stuff. I really don't care. I really don't care. I tell them all the time, y'all really don't want to invite me to one of those conversations. Because see, I'm unlike some other people, okay? I don't have the make you feel comfortable gene. It doesn't exist. It doesn't. Look, my wife is an ordained minister. She's been ordained for 23 years. She went to school. She got the paperwork, went to seminary. Look, she has a wonderful spirit, y'all. She will pray with you. She'll talk to you. She'll hold your hand. You put your head on her shoulder. I mean, she has a comforting spirit. I do not possess the comforting spirit. I don't. God said, no, that I'm not giving you that one. God has given me the discomfort gene. That's the gene where I don't care where I am. I'm going to be the person who says something where you go, damn, did he really? Ooh. You know, I have this phrase whenever you see me debating folks on television, whether it's my TV One show, whether it's MSNBC, or when I was on CNN, or when I do ABC This Week. I call it the, folks do the butt dance. So the butt dance, when you sit in a chair on television and I make it real uncomfortable for you and you start, you know, so how sometimes you feel in church, you start like, ooh, they talking to me. See, I'm gonna make you do the butt dance. I'm making you feel, some of y'all right now doing the butt dance. I can see y'all right now. Y'all moving in your chairs like, okay, did he really have to go there? Yes, I did. And that's just how it is. In February, I was in Houston for the Super Bowl, and they had this panel on race and sports, and they had a number of football players there, Brandon Marshall and Michael Bennett and others, and it was an initiative started by the Miami Dolphins owner, Steve Ross, and they were broadcasting it on Sirius XM radio. And so the woman who was the CEO of the initiative, she was moderating the panel. I don't think she saw any video of me before. I don't really think she did. So they had the first panel. They were just talking about the issue of, social justice in terms of athletes and the things that they're doing and blah, 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 blah. And then they were just talking about how things are wonderful in the NFL and how players get along. And I'm sitting here and I'm literally going, this is bullshit. It was. See, I'm not interested in the fake conversations. And so when the first panel was done, then they called us up for the second panel. She threw a question to me. I didn't know what her question was. I said, I'm sorry, let me go ahead and say this so we can just be as honest as possible. I said, I don't want to hear anybody here talking about the issue of race if we don't confront the reality that you literally have discrimination in the executive suite of the NFL. It was like, damn, did he just say that? Do he know there's an NFL owner right there? Yes, I did. And I didn't care if he was sitting there. I didn't care if the initiative was his. I was there to say what no one wanted to say. I said, if y'all want to be honest, we could talk about being honest. In fact, the first 20-odd Africans arrived in America in 1619 in August in Virginia. I said that we had 244 years of legalized slavery in this country. Then we had the Emancipation Proclamation that was signed. Then we had 12 years of Reconstruction, which ended with the Great Compromise of 1877, where the Republicans agreed to have Hayes become the president. The Democrats said you will withdraw the federal troops from the last 3 remaining state capitals in the South. It was that compromise that ushered in Jim Crow. Then all of a sudden you had the KKK formed. When you talk about police departments today, they used to be slave patrols. They all of a sudden migrated into police departments. So then you have from 1877 all the way through the 1960s, this whole battle with Jim Crow, which Douglas Blackman called slavery by another name. And then you had the Black Freedom Movement, started, of course, with Emmett Till killed August 28, 1955. Then Montgomery bus boycott begins December 1st, 1955. Then you have 13 long, hard years of fighting. 1964 Civil Rights Act, 1965 Voting Rights Act, 1968 Fair Housing Act. All of those things happening. And so if you really use MLK's death, or let's say 2 years after, 1970 as the marker, when black folks have been fully free in this country, we're only talking 47 years. I want you to think about that. I need you to visualize that. I need you to visualize we're talking 47 years. I'm 48. I'll be 49 in November, which means that I was born into an America where I was not fully free. I started talking about watching a game last night. How many of you have heard of Title IX? How many of you think that Title IX was about sports? That's the lie that has been promoted. You only hear discussion about Title IX as if it was about letting women be able to play basketball and other sports. No, Title IX was created to open up the professional schools for women. The explosion of female doctors and dentists and lawyers and engineers were a result of Title IX. Where does Title IX come from? It's a provision of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I'm saying that because when you look at the advancement of women over the past 4 decades, and you point to Title IX, and then when I am debating white women today about Title IX, I'm going, baby, you might want to thank black people for that, for your advancement, because it wasn't for the 64 Civil Rights Act, you wouldn't have a provision to be able to pull Title IX from. That's called history. When you look at affirmative action put into place by Arthur Fletcher when Nixon becomes president, sworn in 1969, the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action since then have been white women. Numbers don't lie. Now, why am I laying this out there? It's because when we talk about this notion of diversity, we have to confront the reality in terms of who is benefited more than somebody else. And then we have to deal with what I call this fake discussion of diversity today, when all of a sudden we've gotten so far away from the original intent, I don't even recognize what this thing diversity is. In fact, Ava DuVernay, the director of Selma, she told Oprah, stop even saying diversity, Oprah. She said, call it inclusion. Oprah, in a cover story in the Hollywood Reporter, Oprah said, because of Ava, I will never ever use the word diversity. She said, because I'm talking about inclusion, because Ava says, if we are not included at the table, then there is no conversation to be had. And see, and what happens here, we have this little game that's being played all over the country on these issues, because now we have a new generation of millennials, and people say, oh, no, but they grew up listening to hip-hop, and you know what, they watch Blackish, and they all get along. But when you look at the numbers, the polls show that there's a belief that discrimination against whites today is as prevalent as it is against black folks. And I'm sorry, what were you looking at? Then I'm debating white men in this country. They say, but it's not all our fault. And I go, I said, it ain't your fault, but you might want to look at, you got the hookup. I was debating this one guy. He was, in fact, the white supremacist Richard Spencer. I was debating him on my show. Some of y'all might have seen that debate. I think we're up to about 7 million views on Facebook. And it was supposed to be a 16-minute interview. I decided to beat up on him for 32 minutes. And it was interesting because he was complaining. He's like, yes, but we're losing opportunities. I said, dude, can you turn around at the U.S. Capitol? I said, do you know how many white guys work over there? I said, you complain about the president. There have been 45. You had 44 of them. I said, in any sport, 44 and 1 is pretty damn good. And he was sitting here going through this, and he was just complaining. And what I try to explain to folks is that, no, what it requires a new generation of people to stop lying to ourselves and being honest about how we have not advanced as much as we think. Wednesday night, I was in New York City. And the T. Howard Foundation is an organization that is established to provide internships for college students of color. And what was amazing is that they recognized our founder, Kathy Hughes, the first black woman to lead a company on the New York Stock Exchange, her son, Alfred Liggins. And they also honored John Landgraf, Landgraf. And Courtney B. Vance, who won an Emmy for The People vs. O.J. Simpson, presented John his award. And I told the T. Howard Foundation folks, when they have the video, I want them to let me know to post this video online. And the reason I want to post it, because of what John, not only what he has done, but what he said. So here's John Landgraf, 54-year-old white guy. And John was talking to he was looking at the shows they do, and he said, I need to understand, how is it that we have changed as a country in terms of women and people of color, yet 88% of the shows we do are directed by white guys? So John sends an email out, and this is what it means to be a real leader. See, there are some people, they have meetings and blue ribbon panels and commissions and task forces, and they happen 5, 6, 10 years and nothing ever changes. No. John sent an email out, and he said this is going to change. In 6 months, they went from 18% in terms of the folks who were overseeing their shows to 51%. Let me say it again. They went from 18 to 51 in 6 months. You've seen the show Atlanta on FX, won all kinds of awards, very popular show. John said the reason that show is successful is because we had diverse directors and producers and leaders. He said, I'm a white guy who was trained by a white guy who knows a bunch of other white guys. He said, but I would be a fool to think that we are going to survive as a network in the future if we don't understand that America has changed, but we haven't. John's leadership, his leadership is the reason why it changed. And then he threw the gauntlet down, and y'all understand, at the dinner, all the networks are there. Showtime, HBO, NBC, Universal, Comcast. I mean, take your pick. All these cable networks are there. John said to everybody in the room, catch us if you can. Challenging them that if you want to beat us, you're going to have to put in the work. That was a drop the mic moment. And the reason that's important because when I think of what John Landgraf did, I think of what Al Newhart did. Al Newhart was a CEO of Gannett, founder of USA Today. When Al Newhart, now here's a guy, grew up in South Dakota. Ain't there many black folks in South Dakota? Ain't there many Latinos in South Dakota? So a whole lot of white folks in South Dakota. Al Newhart said, we are going to change the industry. So Al Newhart said, as a CEO, he said, we are going to increase the number of people of color and women who are news directors, who are editors, who are publishers, who are in executive positions in our company. He said, and I'm going to tie the changes to your bonuses. He said, and if you don't like it, leave the company. And there were some people who came up to him. They were mad as hell. How dare you do this? How dare you tell me how I need to run my team? He's like, I don't care. He said, I'm the CEO. You will do what I say. And then there were some people who he told to leave. He said, y'all can be bye. He said, if you don't understand that this matters, then you cannot work in my company. Overnight, Gannett became the leading company when it came to diversity and inclusion out of every media company in America. And here's what happened. Knight Ridder saw the talent drain. They said, well, man, we better start doing the same thing. Cox saw the talent drain. They said, do the same thing. The decision by one man, Al Newhart, forced a change in the entire industry because they saw what was happening. What John Landgraf is doing at FX will reverberate all across the industry because what's going to happen is you're going to have people of color with ideas who are going to go right to FX with their shows, trying to get them on the air because they know they can actually control their product, and the other networks are going to see their success, and they're going to say, well, we may want to start talking to some black people and some women and some Latinos because we got to get our butt kicked. Well, why am I laying this out this way? Because I'm trying to lay out this is what happens when you lead. When you lead. When you don't accept excuses. When you don't allow people to say, oh, but we can't find them. That's the biggest lie I have ever seen. And you hear it all the time in corporate America. Now some of y'all look at me right now like, okay, man, he really going off on some people. I'm laying this out to you because I need you to understand you're going to be one of those people one day. You're going to be one of those folks working in a company, and you would have been there 5 and 8 and 10 years, and you're going to be an executive vice president or president or CEO or director, and you are going to literally have the power in your hands to change the culture of a company, to change the makeup, and the question is, what will you do? I'm not impressed about you attending this conference. I want to know, what will you do when you leave this conference? What personal commitment will you make as an individual to say that if by 24 America will no longer be a white majority country, it will be a minority country, majority, then the business practices must change. And see, right now, there is fear because of what the future holds. There's tremendous fear. In fact, if you look at the Pew study in 2016, it was a very interesting question. The question was asked, are you optimistic about the future of America economically for the next 10 years? African Americans, lowest amount of wealth, had the highest optimism about the future of America economically. Latinos, second lowest when it came to wealth, had the second highest optimism. But here's what was interesting. Whites in America, $110,000 average family wealth, African Americans $5,000 per the Brandeis University study, had the lowest optimism about the future of America economically for the next 10 years. Now you would go, well, hold up, how y'all got more money than everybody else, but less optimistic? Because there's a fear that their children will not be able to get the jobs they got. And that's because they now have to compete. It's not going to be, let me call my buddy who can get my son a job. Because see, now when they call a buddy is working for Lakeisha. Now their buddy might be reporting to Jose. Maria might be the one in charge of hiring. And they were used to Amber. I know some of y'all saying, okay, but why have to go? I'm trying to explain to you the reality of where we are in 2017. That is our reality. And the problem is, too many of us are living in our wonderful, think we live in a multicultural world, but we're actually lying to ourselves in this so-called multicultural world. And we go, oh, no, but we've gone to school with different people and we know each other. No, we're still living a lie. Because, see, the reality is, see, this conference is what I call a voluntary environment. It's voluntary. You chose to come to this specific conference. But your university, that's an involuntary environment. You really don't have a control over the other students who come in. You don't have a control over the people sitting in your classroom. You don't have a control over that. But you do have a control over who's in your fraternities and your sororities. You do have a control, and you do control who you eat lunch with, who you eat dinner with. I was speaking to the MLK event in Wilmington, Delaware, and they were so cute. They had all these students on stage, high school students. They were just talking about how wonderful and diverse and how they all get along. And I'm sitting here and I'm listening to them, and I was sort of looking like that brother in Get Out, like something ain't right here. And let's be clear, you will never find me in a sunken place. That ain't gonna happen. And so I'm sitting here and I'm listening to them, and so what I did was I moderated a discussion with the students. Then I gave the keynote. And as all these students were talking, literally as they kept talking, I was going, this is bullshit. They lying to each other. And so I then said, okay, I said, well, let me ask y'all a question. I said, who do you eat with? They go, oh, so what do you mean? I said, no, at lunch, when you go into the cafeteria, who do you eat with? Oh, I eat with my friends. I said, okay, so who are your friends? And so as I began to drill down, that butt dance started happening. Them and their parents in the audience. As I started drilling down, what I discovered is that white students were largely eating with white students. Latinos were largely eating with Latinos. African Americans were largely eating with African Americans. I said, the diversity and the inclusion and the multicultural world y'all think y'all have is an absolute lie. I said, because you are friends on the periphery. I said, but when it comes time to who you eat with, which is a much different type of dynamic, you are moving towards your own tribes. Then I turned to the audience and to the parents. I said, and it's y'all fault. I said, because I can guarantee you who they eat with at school mirrors who's at your dinner table. And I began to challenge the parents, and I said, how many of you white parents have black folks, Latinos at your dinner table? I said, African Americans, how many of y'all have any white folks at your dinner table? I said, see, the deal is, I know what the deal is. Y'all go to work where it's an involuntary situation, and you go home where it's voluntary, and there are people from different backgrounds and different ethnicities and genders who are not sitting at your dinner table. I said, so what's happening is you are raising children who are living a lot of multiculturalism at school, but then at home it's looking the same as it has been. So they really don't have a connection that goes deeper than just hi, bye, how you doing, we play sports together, or we in the club together. No, see, that's where relationship comes in, when there's a deeper understanding of who you are as an individual. See, if you turn to the person next to you and you say, what's your favorite color? And you have no clue, but you say, oh no, but we're good friends, you're lying. See, that's important, because as we're talking about how do we change, it is going to require all of us to get out of our silos and stop lying to ourselves to somehow believe that we really and truly know one another. Because if we're talking about how we actually hire, it's also a lot. We're not hiring based off of a job board. Don't let anybody in HR lie to you. The reality is this here. We are hiring based on relationships. Who does somebody know? 60 to 80% of the jobs in America come to fruition because you know somebody and somebody got recommended, and that's how they got hired. Don't let HR folks lie to you. They all love them to death, but they lie. I've worked in too many companies where they post a job and they actually decided who they were going to promote for that job long before that sheet of paper went up, and the sheet of paper is only going up to satisfy HR. I'm trying to speak some uncomfortable truths to you, because what we need a generation of people who will agree to stop the same games of the previous generation. Because see, when you talk about where we are as a country, you really have to understand that all of these things are absolutely linked. You heard me lay out 1619 to 1863, 1865 to 1877, 1877 through 1968. When I was at the Treasury Department for them placing a plaque at the annex across the street from the Department of Treasury as the Freedmen's Bank, was a brother who introduced one of the speakers, and he was the first African American who was hired in the banking industry in Louisiana. So here I was looking at a brother who was the first one hired. And look, you talk to Eddie Brown, who was in finance, was the first African American, I believe, who worked at either Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch in 1971, 1972. And so when you begin to look at folks who are being excluded from positions, you then can say, wait a minute, now I understand why a neighborhood looks this way, because if folks have been frozen out of economic opportunities, frozen out of the ability to save and invest, then we see why you have these deep embedded pockets of poverty in this country. When I sat at the table at the Network Anchors Luncheon with President Donald Trump, and I said, do understand, I can't even call him Mr. President, but I said, but do understand, I barely could say, sir, I should have just said 45. Do understand that when you keep talking about Chicago, you had better deal with economics and education when you only talking about violence. Because as John Hope Bryant, the founder of Operation Hope, says, you have never seen a riot in a community with a credit score of 700 or higher. See, the reason I'm painting this broad picture for you, because to understand where we are as a nation, you have to understand where we are economically, and to only understand America, you better follow the money. In fact, how many of you have been to D.C.? Raise your hand. How many of you have either been to or walked by the White House? Question for you. There's only one federal agency that shares a lawn with the White House. Treasury. If you want to understand America, power, money. Money, power. That by itself explains America. So to explain where we are as a nation, you have to follow the money. And when you have groups who have been systematically frozen out of every major sector in the country, that has a direct correlation to schools, to neighborhoods, to families, to wealth creation. It's a direct correlation. I just told you, I was born November 14th, 1968, which means that I was born into an America where I was not fully free. And fully free, which Jackie Robinson talked about, Dr. King always talked about. Fully free means that literally a black child or Latino child is born into America. They come out the womb with the same absolute freedoms as a white child. But see, let me tell you how deep this thing is. The reality is, the racial discord and the separation exists even when a child's in the womb. Because the fact of the matter is a black child and a Latino child is developmentally behind a white child by virtue of the lack of prenatal care for the mama. So literally, if you take the average white woman in America, the average black woman in America, the average Latino woman in America, and you look at the development of their child as they are in the womb, that black child and that Hispanic child in the womb are already behind developmentally because of what's put into their body. Do you have food deserts in the neighborhood where a black woman lives, a Latina woman lives? Do you have environmental racism in those neighborhoods? So even the air that a white woman is breathing, the food that she is eating is different than that of the black and Latino, which impacts the development of that baby coming out the womb. So then when the kid is 2, 3, 4, 5, then you go to in kindergarten, then you're wondering why a significant number of black and Latino kids are going into school not even knowing 250 words. You got to understand why. I'm trying to paint this picture for you because when we talk about how do we change America holistically, we can't just somehow think that hiring a couple of people when they are adults in a company is going to change the history of America. It literally requires us to think generationally. And let me explain generation, which is I need you to understand that as you're going into your career. If you are a woman, and if you're African American, or Latino, or Asian, then, when I say, well, actually, let me say, if you are a white woman, because see, first of all, you look at even affirmative action stats, if you're a black woman with a business, you go in the black category, you don't go in the women category. So really, the women category from the action really should say WW white women. That's just fact. I mean, don't hate me because I know it, but that's just fact. Okay, so, here's why this is important. When a woman and a minority is denied advancement, that means their earnings are being capped. That means that this is all you're going to make. But if that man is making this, now all of a sudden that changes the game. Because what that means is that a minority worker, in many cases a white woman, will not have the ability to be able to earn a higher amount of money, which means they don't have the ability to be able to save a higher amount of money, invest a higher amount of money, which impacts also what they're able to buy, what they're able to acquire. Now, you look at the marriage stats, largely white women will marry white men, will take them out of this category. So what this means is that if you're denying opportunities to advance, then what you're literally doing is you're impacting the children's children of that worker today, because If you take the average African American student coming out of college, they have $30,000 in debt. The average white student has $15,000 in debt. When you look at the savings that exist, $110,000 for an average white family, $5,000 for a black family, which means that when that white student decides to get married, mom and daddy gives them a down payment on the house. For the black child, mom and daddy gives them an appliance for their house. And so what happens is that means that the average African American not only has student loan debt, The question was, how, as he has a daughter, how does he put her in these uncomfortable situations? This is where first reading is so important. I said as a kid I would read 300 books a summer. And so what happens is what you read also allows for you to expand your knowledge. I appreciate the classroom, I appreciate all of that. But the reality is that the education that I've received outside of the classroom has blown away what was taking place in the classroom. And so one of the things that everyone must do is you must drive that in terms of whether it's autobiographies, whether it's business books, whether it's real life stories, to get people to understand in terms of how you see the word differently. There's a book by Jerry Weintraub. Y'all write this down. Weintraub. And Jerry, who saw Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, well, he was the producer of those films. Famous Hollywood producer. And I was on the train, I got his book, and his book is called When I Stop Talking, You'll Know I'm Dead. Useful Stories from a Persuasive Man. I was on the train, I read this book, and this is what I mean by again, thinking differently. When I was on the train, I read this book, and I said, man, this is an unbelievable book. This should be required reading in every MBA school. Because he's telling you stories about literally how he made his way, how he connected with people, how he took risks. And so I'm reading the book, and I'm just like, wow, this is an amazing book. He called Elvis's manager every day for a year to try to be a promoter for Elvis. He called every day. And promoters finally like, damn, who the hell is this guy? So he tells the guy, fine. You want to promote Elvis? Fine. You bring me $1 million in 48 hours. So Jerry hung the phone up and was like, damn, how in the hell I'm going to get $1 million? Figured out, got the money, came in. Led to a lucrative partnership. So I'm on the train. So I go, I just need